for I had stored my bitterness for a long time, and it was expressing itself in small anger. And some Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Lozed Mnaji. I'm a content creator. For those who have subscribed and those who have watched my videos, I'd like to say thank you. If you haven't subscribed, I hope that you'll subscribe. So today's topic will talk about bitterness. It's something that I've encountered before. I'm grateful to be out of it. So it's an attitude of extended and intense anger, hostility, and resentment, and desire to get even. It's as a result of not forgiving someone and letting hurt and anger grow until pain and resentment hurts your view of life. It can come from pain, from unmet expectation, maybe by your loved ones, your friend and family, or hurt from other people, loss. As for me, my experience with bitterness, it was when I had an argument with my mother. So we were all sitting. It was me, my mother, and my aunt. My aunt had visited us, and we remember saying a comment that really hurt my mother. When I internalized and I thought to myself, I had bitterness from unmet expectations and expectations that I had from my mom and from my parents. Some of the characteristics or how you can know that you have bitterness. One is by having outbursts of anger, where you find that maybe you're conversing with someone or maybe you're talking about someone, and then you find that you have said a mean comment or you have said something that hurts you or something that's out of anger. And sometimes you can internalize the anger where maybe you think that this person is superior than you, and maybe you keep the anger in you and it hurts you. That is worse because now you don't release the anger. Having outbursts of anger doesn't mean that it's the correct way of expressing your anger, but then internalizing the anger destroys you and it kills you. The second one is thoughts of revenge, where you find that you think of revenging this person, or you think of maybe a scenario that can hurt this person, a scenario that can harm the other person. Unexplained sadness, and this one was true for me, where you find that you just sit and you feel very sad in your heart, or you feel sad and you don't know where the sadness is coming from. For I had stored my bitterness for a long time, and then it was expressing itself in small anger. Another characteristic is that whenever you think of this person, you don't see any good in them, or you don't have any memory or any thoughts of goodness in them, even though they may be doing good to you. An example of my mother, she was providing for me, but whenever you think of this person, you don't see any good or any positive thing in them. Why do you think it's necessary to let go of the bitterness that we have, or maybe the bitterness that we have held for a very long time? So one of the reasons is it separates you from God. For the word of God says that the Lord will shoot an arrow against bitter people. Bitterness separates you from God because now you don't love the other person, and God is love. And his first command is that we should love God with all our heart, with all our minds, and with all our soul. The second one is that we should love the other person as we love ourselves. And bitterness prevents us from loving the other person, so it separates us from God. The second one is that bitterness steals your time or takes away from you. You find that you dwell so much on one event or one person who caused that pain or bitterness that you stop living. You stop seeing the goodness of life. You stop having a positive attitude or a positive view of what life should be, and you just dwell on the negative. Third reason we should let go of bitterness is that bitterness kills you. It destroys you who hold the bitterness. It is said that bitterness is like taking poison and being able to expect the other person to die. Bitterness kills your goals, it kills your values, and it kills you as a person. And no one wants to be with bitter people because they only dwell on negativity. And sometimes bitterness can be reflected to the person who caused that hurt, or maybe can be transferred to other people or to the people who are near you. People who maybe haven't caused the hurt, you transfer the bitterness to them. From the Bible, how can we be free from this bitterness. So the first one is being willing to help other people. And I learned this from the story of Naomi. So when Naomi lost his husband and lost his 2 sons, Ruth agreed to follow Naomi back. When Naomi returned, his people wanted to celebrate her that she had returned, but she told them not to, for the Lord had dealt harshly with her. And she said that she didn't want to be called Naomi anymore. She helped Ruth to get a husband who was Boaz. We see that Naomi didn't dwell in that bitterness that was caused from the loss of his family. And later, Ruth married Boaz. And we find that they had a child, they had a son. And then the people came to celebrate Naomi, and Naomi was happy and Naomi rejoiced. For now, we see that the Lord had restored her to losing her family. Another lesson we learn is that we should be continuous in our communication with God. We should go into prayer or even meditation or even reflecting with God. That we should tell our God our hearts and what has hurt us or the pain that we're experiencing. That we shouldn't internalize it and deal with it ourselves. That is what Job did. In the story of Job, we find that Job had lost everything, from his family to his wealth to everything. But we find that even when his wife tells him to curse God and die, that is not what Job does. But Job says that he came to this world with nothing and he will go back with nothing. He still have that attitude or that posture of being able to have communion with God and humble himself to God. And later, God restored Job. He restored his wealth and he restored his children more than what Job had. Another lesson that we learned is that we should be prayerful, or we should pray about what makes us bitter. The story of Hannah, we find that Hannah didn't have a child, but his co-wife, or Penina had children. And every time that they will go to make offering, his husband Elikana will give his co-wife more than what he would give Hannah. And Penina criticized Hannah concerning her situation. And so Hannah was bitter. And we find that Hannah goes to pray concerning her situation. And when she entered the temple to pray, we find that Priest Eli thought Hannah had been drinking. And that's how much that thing had pained Hannah, that she cried bitterly towards the Lord concerning her situation. And later we find that Hannah gives birth to Samuel, who was dedicated to God. But later we find that God blessed Hannah with multiple children. Being able to submit ourselves to God and not letting our bitterness control us, or not letting our bitterness take hold of us and drive us, is really important. One person in the Bible who let bitterness control him was Absalom. So Absalom was the brother to Tamar, and Amnon abused Tamar. Absalom tells Tamar that she should forgive his brother and she shouldn't hold it in his heart. But we find that Absalom meditated on it, and Absalom really let that bitterness stay in him, because after 2 years, when Absalom was having sheep shearers, he invited all the king's sons, and that's where he killed Amnon, his brother. He held that bitterness in him, and we find that bitterness led him to overtake his father's kingdom. And when he was escaping from David, we see that he hanged himself in a tree, and that's where bitterness can lead you. It leads you to places where you lose yourself and you lose who you are as a person, being driven by bitterness. Whenever we surrender ourselves and whenever we let God handle our bitterness, we find that God gives us the strength to overcome the bitterness, because on our own, bitterness may be hard to overcome, but with God, He helps us and He gives us the strength to overcome our bitterness. Another thing that God does is that God restores us of what we have lost. Maybe if it's loss that has caused you to have bitterness, God restores what we have lost, and He gives us peace in our hearts. God builds us up again. If we have fallen to the point that we cannot build ourselves up, God builds us up again, and He gives us the strength to walk anew, or to walk in His newness. So that's it about bitterness, and I'd like to encourage you not to dwell in bitterness, but to surrender it to God. For God is the only one who can help us deal with our bitterness and help us deal with our hearts. I'd like to say thank you for watching this video, and that may you have a nice day, may you have a nice time. Bye.